Hi there, everybody. Today we will be discussing further into more so what we've already been covering, topics and topics around social activism. Today we're looking at more so environmental qualities that are determining cultural interests and priorities. In this presentation, I will magnify the communities under the lens of analysis, for it's a community that determines its needs and values for social appeasement. The issue arises when those discourses, those discussions, are one-sided or mediated in limited manners. Protests are confined to specific spaces with historical or contemporary significance to the community. Why is it we see more policies and measures that control the mobility of activism? We all know that windows of opportunity are or demand initiative. So why is it that we allow the state to control and name those spaces for us? Europe is a beautiful scene for action and effect because of its new and upcoming Show Israel the Red Card protests, which are demanding for the suspension of Israel in international or just major leagues in sports. To name a few, Morocco, Italy, Spain, Greece, and Ireland are asking their respective leagues and teams to respond and break their complicit natures. Yet, what we're lacking here in North America is for the volition to do more when it is not absolutely necessary. Because when we see North America, we only see situations where people already in power are having to sacrifice their own positions to develop some kind of movement, create some kind of nudge. And when we are looking at how a lot of these movements in Europe or across the old world are using and reworking media to function on their terms, we should be asking ourselves, why are we not doing the same? And how can we turn millions of dollars of revenue into new framing processes for our own movements? So here we're looking at the originators of these protests, which started on February 12th, 2025. The Green Brigade is an Irish fan base for Celtic FC, a Scottish team that plays in Major League Soccer, such as the Champions League or the European Football Association. They have a long and arduous history centered around anti-sectarian and anti-fascist ideals. Representing the large Irish minority of Scotland, Celtic FC is cultural confirmation of identity that's created a distinctive set of symbols, with that logo on the right, the rebel being their most synonymous one. When we move upwards to the other image, Bodo Glimt is a Norwegian football team that truly went above and beyond donating its regular match revenue of $65,000 to Gaza Aid, which places community values and its own over profits, which is something that we can sort of represent as an example of bourgeoisie revolutions, where we see other classes work to sort of maintain these bonds with their own consumers for longevity rather than for, again, profit. These two cases have framed their causes under national lenses where surveillance is reworked into supportive methods, allowing discontent and demands to become widespread beyond those national borders. Obstacles found include social environments resorting in violence and counter-protesting. which dissolved the capability of free speech, as was showcased most clearly on November 8th in Amsterdam. Here, we found that retaliation was the first response to misinformation, as the state sided with the oppressor and cracked down on Palestine protesters who were defending themselves from colonialist aggressors, which simultaneously strengthened the support for their cause. Returning to the rebels of Scotland, we see that their use of showcasing their own sort of pride and cause, they use pyrotechnics, chanting, choreographed songs, as a result, resulting in minor infractions and greater support. Sport, as we can see, is a unifying climate, and should we find the right angle. Moving back in history, we find that it is not exempt to modern day practices. In fact, entertainment has fabricated the industry as a venue for discussion and expression of opinion. Yet if we are to look back at the Greek hippodrome or the Roman Colosseum, all we have seen is that a sovereign plays a more social role, that of an image to give citizens or a feeling of contempt, as if they have been heard. British apartheid followed this rule in a specific manner, as likely many of us are familiar with. They established intentionally barring policies and rules upon non-white people from playing representative and domestic sports. But South African apartheid was an opportunity, a particular blip in time that, for its success, is commemorated in dismantling of the racial structures that restricted African mobility and participation in society. South African boycotts were not led only by colored people in the occupied state, but by Commonwealth states of the British Empire. In it, we found nations such as the Irish, the Scottish, the Australians, and many more press international and domestic sport associations to annex all white teams from competition. South African boycotts framed the opposition as a ruling body that competed in sports of depravity and ridicule, who sought to reap from what another sowed, and the public saw it unfit, so they acted. Moving across the pond, in the West, the window of opportunity has only opened during dire straits, and only at those points have Western acquisition classes finally taken to voicing their opinions on political matters in ways that caused no real change or discussion. A common example being Twitter posts. In reality, what do they do beyond causing a discussion in a group of friends? Yet, a few individuals take a greater stand on larger stages. Social actors that risk success, power, influence, and wealth for a cause they truly believe in. America has been the major site of civil rights movements against roiling injustices, which have shaped the movements for equal justice today. In this section, I want to focus on the example of John Carlos and Tommie Smith, two podium-placing Olympians in the 1968 Summer Olympics, respectively gold and bronze placements in the 200-meter sprint, as well as Colin Kaepernick, a professional football quarterback for the San Francisco 49ers in the NFL. Smith and Carlos attained international fame when they showcased the Black Power salute at the 1968 Mexico City Olympics. This came at a very high cost to their personal lives and careers. Yet what they did cemented themselves as defiers of systemic oppression in the U.S., simultaneously having been condemned from participating in representative sports and being vilified in the media and public. Colin Kaepernick, on the other hand, is an essential part in the revitalization of that movement in acknowledging and continuously recognizing the injustices characteristic in the American police system. In response to the deaths of Alton Sterling, Eric Gardner, and Freddie Gray, Kopernik decided to make a point to sit or kneel during the national anthem to commemorate the people of color who have lost their lives. These three athletes alone faced repercussions for their solidarity, but they made change. They established the groundwork for the public to step up when it was most dire. That in itself is worthy of notice and discussion. And they're not the only ones who have done this. There have been many others who have risked their lives and have lost them because of what they stood for. Today, in a nation facing more oppressive and exceptional practices, we have been given the groundwork once again by the actions of men and women across the globe and through the egregious feign of ignorance that our state plays. We must ask, how will the media tell what we want to hear? And I say that we should show them. And what better venue is there than where they spend millions of dollars to draw our attention?